In September 2025, the FBI made headlines across the nation when it fired nearly 20 agents in a single controversial move. These agents were dismissed for kneeling during a 2020 protest against racial injustice in Washington, D.C., a gesture that, at the time, was seen by many as a powerful call for change and solidarity with the movement for racial equality. The firings did not go unnoticed. Instead, they reignited a fierce and emotional debate about race, justice, and the complex role of law enforcement in American society. Across the country, people questioned whether the Bureau was punishing empathy or upholding its standards of conduct. Was kneeling a simple act of compassion, a necessary de-escalation tactic in a tense moment, or an inappropriate political statement for federal agents sworn to impartiality? The answer depended on who you asked, and the lines were anything but clear. The decision, made by newly appointed FBI Director Patel, sent shockwaves through both the Bureau and the public. Patel's move drew both condemnation and support, splitting not only public opinion but also the Bureau itself, as agents and officials struggled to navigate the fallout. Critics were quick to call the terminations unlawful and politically motivated, warning that such actions could damage morale, erode trust within the ranks, and ultimately undermine the Bureau's effectiveness at a critical time. Supporters, however, insisted that federal agents must remain strictly neutral, arguing that any perceived political act, no matter how well-intentioned, could undermine public trust in law enforcement and blur the lines between personal beliefs and professional duty. This story is about far more than a group of fired agents. It's about the deep divisions that run through American society, the ongoing struggle to define what it truly means to serve and protect, and the difficult questions facing those tasked with upholding justice in a fractured nation. As the country grapples with its identity, the actions of these agents, and the Bureau's response, continue to spark conversations about justice, loyalty, and the future of law enforcement in America. To truly understand the actions of the agents, we must first revisit a pivotal moment in recent American history, May 25, 2020, a day that would change the nation's consciousness. On this day, George Floyd, a black man, was killed by a Minneapolis police officer during an arrest right at the intersection of 38th Street and Chicago Avenue. The world watched as Floyd's final moments were captured on video, his desperate pleas echoing across social media and news outlets. The harrowing footage showing Floyd repeatedly saying, "I can't breathe," shocked the conscience of millions. It was a moment that transcended borders, as people everywhere saw the pain and injustice unfold in real time. The video quickly went viral, igniting a wave of outrage and sorrow. In the days and weeks that followed, protests erupted not only across the United States, but around the globe. People from all walks of life took to the streets, demanding justice for George Floyd and calling for an end to systemic racism and police brutality. These demonstrations, some of the largest in U.S. history, were marked by a powerful sense of urgency and collective pain. While the majority of protests were peaceful, the emotions ran high and the calls for change were impossible to ignore. The Black Lives Matter movement surged to the forefront, pushing for sweeping reforms. Activists demanded measures like banning chokeholds, increasing police accountability, and reallocating police funding to community services. Their voices amplified a national conversation about justice and equality. The summer of 2020 became a turning point, forcing the country to confront deep-seated issues of race, privilege, and inequality. Communities came together in solidarity, united by a shared desire for lasting change. Law enforcement agencies, including local police and federal agents, suddenly found themselves on the front lines. They faced crowds that were determined to be heard, and every action they took was watched closely by a nation in turmoil. Every gesture by officers, whether kneeling in solidarity or standing in opposition, carried immense symbolic weight. The public scrutinized their every move, searching for signs of empathy or resistance. In this charged and emotional atmosphere, the actions of federal agents would soon become a flashpoint, further shaping the national debate on justice, authority, and the future of policing in America. Kneeling as protest began with NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick in 2016, a silent stand against police brutality. After George Floyd's death, kneeling became a global symbol of solidarity with Black lives and a call for justice. For many, it was a moving act of empathy and resistance. For others, a divisive political gesture. The controversy never faded, especially for those in uniform. Some saw kneeling by law enforcement as a bridge to the community, an acknowledgement of pain. Others viewed it as a betrayal of impartiality and a politicization of the badge. This dual meaning set the stage for the FBI agent's fateful decision. The gesture's power and its controversy would soon engulf the Bureau. In June 2020, FBI agents in D.C. knelt during a protest, hoping to de-escalate tensions with demonstrators. Supporters say the gesture was a compassionate act of community policing, not a political endorsement. By kneeling, agents aimed to show respect and humanity, diffusing a volatile situation. Protesters saw it as a rare moment of solidarity from law enforcement. Images of the kneeling agents spread online, celebrated by many as a hopeful sign. Critics, however, argued the agents crossed a line, abandoning neutrality and aligning with a political movement. Right-wing commentators claimed the gesture undermined law enforcement's authority and morale. The debate quickly polarized. Were the agents de-escalating or validating criticism of their own profession? The meaning of that moment would haunt the Bureau for years. The agent's intent was debated, but the consequences were real. For 5 long years, the story of the kneeling agents seemed to disappear from public memory, quietly fading into the background as the world moved on to new headlines and crises. The agents themselves returned to their daily duties, but the shadow of that day lingered, unspoken but ever present in the halls of the Bureau. Then, in September 2025, the FBI, now under the leadership of Director Patel, made a stunning announcement. The agents involved were fired for what was officially described as a lack of judgment. The decision, abrupt and severe, reignited a firestorm of debate across the country. The timing of the firings, coming so many years after the original incident, immediately raised eyebrows. Many questioned whether this was truly about professional conduct, or if it was a calculated move driven by political motives and the desire to settle old scores. Critics quickly denounced the firings, arguing they were part of a much broader purge, targeting federal employees perceived as disloyal to the current administration. For them, this was not just about a single act, but about a chilling trend of political retribution sweeping through government agencies. On the other hand, supporters of the decision insisted that FBI agents must uphold the highest standards of conduct, especially when representing the Bureau in volatile public situations. They argued that even the appearance of partiality or political expression could undermine public trust in law enforcement. For these supporters, the act of kneeling was simply too ambiguous, too easily interpreted as a political statement in a time of national division. They believed federal agents should remain above the fray, avoiding any gesture that could be seen as taking sides. But opponents of the firing saw things differently. They pointed out that the agent's decision to kneel was a nonviolent human response to a tense and potentially explosive situation. In their view, the agents showed empathy and helped de-escalate conflict, embodying the very best of law enforcement. The phrase lack of judgment quickly became a flashpoint, a symbol of the deep divide over what Americans expect from those sworn to protect and serve. Was it a necessary standard or a weapon to silence dissent? The firings sent a chilling message throughout the ranks of federal law enforcement. Even acts of compassion, if politically inconvenient, could lead to career-ending consequences. Many agents began to wonder where the line truly was. As the controversy deepened, the Bureau's reputation and its very future hung in the balance, with the nation watching to see what kind of agency the FBI would become. The FBI Agents Association, FBIAA, swiftly condemned the firings, calling them unlawful and a violation of agents' rights. They argued that some of the dismissed agents were military veterans entitled to special protections, and that due process was ignored. The FBIAA accused Director Patel of weakening the Bureau and devastating morale. Civil rights groups echoed these concerns, framing the firings as punitive and politically motivated. Calls for congressional investigation grew, with advocates warning of a dangerous precedent for silencing compassion in uniform. Online, many hailed the agents as heroes, launching crowdfunding campaigns for their legal battles. For supporters, the firings were a clear injustice and a sign of the Bureau's drift from its core values. The agents became symbols in a larger culture war over conscience and authority. Yet, many supported the FBI's decision, insisting that law enforcement must remain strictly neutral. They argued that kneeling, regardless of intent, aligned agents with a political movement and risked eroding public trust. Allowing such gestures, they warned, could open the door to all forms of political expression in uniform. The firings were seen as a necessary reassertion of discipline and impartiality. Supporters viewed the move as a course correction, restoring the Bureau's traditional non-political culture. For them, the agent's dismissal was about preserving the FBI's credibility for all Americans. The kneeling agent's firings were part of a wider pattern under Director Patel, who had dismissed several other agents and executives. Critics accused the administration of reshaping the Bureau to fit a political agenda, using lack of judgment as a pretext. Lawsuits from former high-ranking officials alleged political retaliation and a purge of independent voices. The FBIAA warned that this climate of fear and instability threatened recruitment, retention, and the FBI's mission. The Bureau's independence and nonpartisanship appeared under direct assault. The firings were not just about individual conduct, but about the soul of the FBI itself. Public trust and internal morale were at risk, as the Bureau's future direction hung in the balance. The story of the fired agents reflects America's ongoing struggle with race, protest, and public service. Kneeling remains a powerful, divisive symbol. Empathy for some, politicization for others. The agent's fate highlights the challenge for law enforcement, building trust while upholding neutrality. The firings, amid broader dismissals, raised alarms about politicization and the erosion of institutional independence. Lawsuits and warnings from within the Bureau point to a crisis of identity and mission. The debate over what constitutes a political act and how to bridge deep social divides is far from over. The consequences of this moment will shape policy, public opinion, and the relationship between government and the people. America's journey to reconcile its ideals with its reality continues, and so does the conversation.